He received his PhD from UC Berkeley in 2005. Dr. Rios is the author of 5 books, including Punish, Policing the Lives of Black and Latino Boys, Project Grit, Generating Resilience to Inspire Transformation, and Street Lighting, Poverty, Gangs, and a PhD. Based on over a decade of research, Dr. Rios created Project Grit, a human development program that works with educators to refine leadership, civic engagement, and personal and academic empowerment and young people placed at risk. This program is the focus of a feature and a documentary funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Dr. Rios has worked with local school districts to provide programs and curricula aimed at improving the quality of interactions between authority figures and youths. Using his personal experience of living on the streets, dropping out of school, and yes, being incarcerated as a juvenile, along with his research findings, he has developed interventions for marginalized students aimed at promoting personal transformation and civic engagement. These programs have been implemented in Los Angeles, California, juvenile detention facilities, and alternative high schools. Dr. Rios has been featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Perhaps you've seen his TED Talks, or maybe you've seen him on Oprah Winfrey's Network, or probably heard him on the National Public Radio. His TED Talk, Help for Kids the Education System Ignores, has garnered over 1 million views. Dr. Rios has worked extensively with OPS, presenting to teachers, parents, and students over the last 4 years. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Rios.
Thank you. I always get a warm welcome here. I love Omaha. And I know you think I go to every city and say that, but I promise you that there's two cities outside of California that I would move to, and one of them is Omaha. The other one you really want to know is Atlanta. And I've been to quite a few cities, but I'm very, very honored to be here. It's a beautiful city, beautiful community. I think what I like about it is the friendliness of people, the community that has grown, and it's like a serendipitous kind of community feeling where when I drive around town, when I walk around places, I see people, a diverse array of people, kind of just folding together, being part of community without even knowing that they're building community. And that's what I mean by seeing a special place. Sometimes there's a lot of segregation in cities, and you do see that here. Sometimes there's a lot of educational inequity, and you see that here. And sometimes there's a lack of representation of the people we teach in the higher levels of administration, and you see that here too. So you have challenges, but at the same time, you have the beauty of community in the city and in the district. I've had the privilege of working with various schools at the district office, and I see that people are committed to community. So I am very, very happy that you have this as a theme for your 2 days of getting together. So I just want to let you know that up front that this session here is sort of modeled after what we want to be doing, which is creating belonging. And how you create belonging and community is that you have these difficult conversations sometimes. You have, I come from a storytelling people, so the way that you hear knowledge from me is through story. Yes, I've conducted thousands of surveys. Yes, I've followed kids systematically on the streets for over a decade. I've seen them grow up, and I've written books about this. Yes, I'm a researcher at the University of California, but the way you get knowledge from me is through stories. And I'll just tell you, like the author, Native American author, Leslie Mormon Silko would say, a word of caution: our stories are not just for entertainment. So part one would be discussing some of sort of the experiences that I've encountered along the educational pipeline. And then part two, in the breakout sessions, you'll get some of the research content, some of the research outcomes, some more of the best practices. But you do have both handouts in your hand today, just so that you can also have as reference. And I'm always happy to respond to inquiries. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, and sometimes what we do is with educators is we have a table talk, and it's exactly what you're set up for right now at the tables you're at. But for now, before you start the talking part, let's have you reflect on just on a small strip of paper, or some of you are actually on your phone or your computer. That's okay. That's okay. Don't put it away. Text yourself. Or write it down, or type it up on your computer. But on a real small strip of paper, right, a little corner of your paper there, tell me your purpose. Why did you decide to become an educator? What is your purpose for working with students? Think back of when you were in high school, college, elementary school, and you just said, hey, you know what? I want to be a teacher one day. I want to be a counselor. I want to work in schools one day. I want to be a principal one day. Think back to that moment. What made you want to become an educator? No manifestos, please. Just a 2-sentence max. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay, now do me a favor, and in that table, turn to a neighbor and share, if you can, if you will, what you wrote. And if you're the person that likes to do the talking, now's the time to let the other person talk to you. You got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, we're doing awesome. We're over here cheering you on.
Thank you. You know that's on video, right? I have a mic. I like it. Okay. Talk to me. Why? Raise your hand. Why did you decide to become an educator? Over here. Yes.
To help the underdogs I was an underdog.
To help the underdog because I was an underdog. Tell me about being an underdog.
I'm a product of lots of different fly-by-night programs. Do you remember those cards that you'd pull and you read and then you answered?
Oh, the SRA.
SRA. Then it was,
Hated
I
it.
went through so many programs that were just somebody's idea, a good idea, that I missed huge. At Swiss cheese learning, lots of holes.
Swiss cheese learning. Lots of holes.
Yeah.
And you went through all these programs
Yeah.
and they did not benefit you.
No, they did not.
And so you decided at one point,
I finally had a teacher that filled those holes, and I'm like, and he became an administrator himself. He's a great man, and I wanted to be him.
you wanted to be your teacher. Who was this
His
teacher?
name was Dr. Bernie Vanis, and he was a teacher in Millard, and then he became a principal in Millard. That's a different district.
So your teacher inspired you because he changed the
helped
game
underdogs,
by helping the underdogs and filling the holes in the cheese, as you call it,
Swiss cheese learning. Yes.
and making it a complete, teaching the whole child.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. Here, you get a copy of my free book.
Did you sign it?
I will. Well, hold on, wait a minute. ¿Hablas español?
Oh, there you go.
Pues disculpa, porque el libro está en español, no lo vas a poder leer porque
Ooh, I don't know what
escribí
you
en
just
español.
said.
I said, I apologize. This is the one book I've written in Spanish.
Okay, that's okay.
So,
Spanish.
yeah, there you go. This one I wrote for parents because there was a lot of translation going on at schools. But think about it this way: a lot of translators are highly educated, and when they translate, it's a very advanced kind of Spanish language. Sometimes from other countries, like origin Spain, Argentina, and a lot of your parents are not from Spain or Argentina. And so we needed to make it a little bit more close. So this is an important point. Linguistic translation is not necessarily cultural translation. We know this with our African American learners too. Just because you're talking to parents or any working class population as well, that just because you're talking to people, even in English, right, that you're not talking with them all the time. You're actually talking at them sometimes, right? So it's important to culturally translate for all populations. Okay, back to your purpose. Who else? Volunteers, what's your purpose? Why did you go into education? So we hear over here that it was because there was a gap in the learning process, and then a teacher filled that gap, and then your name again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a flood at my school today. I'm looking at pictures. Beth Holland.
Okay, and Beth says, I wanted to be that teacher so I can help other kids like me. What about you? What's your purpose? Oh, qué bien, me va a decir en español. Okay, so you wanted to
ayudar a los demás a aprender dos idiomas, porque los quien hablan dos idiomas valen por dos.
Oh, wow. You want me to translate that or you want to translate that? How about you translate that?
No, I wanted to help others speak two languages and to value others. There's a saying that says those who speak two languages have the value of, they double their value. Is that?
Yeah, that's a fair translation. Yes, thank you. So there we go. That you wanted to make sure you shared with people their full potential. Thank you very much. And your name?
Sherry Cook.
Sherry Cook. Sherry, it's important to help people value their full potential. In America, it's okay to speak French if you happen to have a French background or want to speak French. But somehow in America, we have to be real about our politics. It's tough to be a Spanish speaker because we're taught that language has low value. In California, in the year 2000, we passed a law, English only. And schools were banned from teaching bilingual education. And a lot of it had to do because of all these Spanish speakers, right? And the fear was that Spanish was going to somehow take over, right? And so I grew up in that generation that was taught, I'm not talking about 50 years ago, I'm talking about now, that was taught that Spanish is bad. And so we're kind of shy to speak Spanish, to be honest. I'll be honest with you. I see a fellow Spanish speaker, I'll speak English to them even though I know they speak Spanish. And I'm sure you'll notice that other languages too, right? There's a hierarchy of value in language, and English is at the top. But to help people value fully who they are, their whole humanness, right? Their belonging, to feel belonging, is to allow them to bring in their language too. Sometimes that's tough, especially if we don't speak their language. Yeah. But there's strategies, there's ways to do that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so you became an educator. Your purpose was to bring the full potential out in people, to be like that one educator that helped you out. And I'm sure there's many more powerful reasons why some of you became educators. Now, when I work with teachers, what I have them do, and this would be, I think, a good exercise for you to use with your teachers, I think, to remind them of their purpose, right? Why they originally went into education. Because a lot of times we get jaded, you know, we get tired, fatigue, and then we forget our purpose. So then I'll ask them to tear out that little sheet of paper they wrote on, fold it up, and hide it, lose it in their purse, put it in their pocket, and then maybe later on during the week, next month, whenever they're cleaning their purse or washing their pants, they'll find that little piece of paper. And that little piece of paper will remind them, hey, this is my purpose. This is why I went into education. Or they might be browsing their phone and find that text they sent themselves. Right? This is who I am. This is why I became an educator. It's important in building community to always remind ourselves, to remind each other why we became educators. One of you earlier was making fun of me because you've seen me give this presentation to teachers, and whenever I present to teachers, I take a picture of the parking lot. And so the next slide shows all the vehicles in the parking lot, and I say, you did not become a teacher to become wealthy. And I show the nice Camrys, the nice Honda Civic lease specials, the nice vehicles, right, that they have. And I say, you know, you did it because you had a purpose, right? Because with their degrees, their credentials, an average educator has at least 5 years of education, right? Many have more, a lot more, but the average is 5 years. With those credentials, those degrees, they could revamp themselves in the market and make 20% more than what they're making now. But they do it because they have a purpose. You do what you do because you came into it with a purpose. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I'll show you a short video clip here.
Now, another in our series on the nation's high school dropout crisis. Tonight, one man's journey from gang member and dropout to professor, and his efforts to keep other young men from making his mistakes. Ray Suarez has our American Graduate story.
My name is Victor Rios. In 1994, this was me. I was introduced to the nation in a Frontline documentary. I was a gang member, a juvenile delinquent, and a high school dropout.
But in the 18 years that followed, Victor Rios earned his high school diploma, finished college, earned a PhD from the University of California at Berkeley, and wrote 2 books on his life and his research on juvenile delinquency. He now teaches sociology at UC Santa Barbara and helps at-risk youth navigate the perils of adolescence. Rios is also a family man with a wife, Rebecca, and 3 children. Life is constantly busy.
To be this far into the future, I feel like I've lived 2 lifetimes. 2 lifetimes. That's an important theme, because if you think about it, many of the children, let me rephrase that, maybe some of the children that come into your schools, depending on what school you manage, they've already, even when they're little, lived an entire lifetime. I'm thinking of someone like my older brother. He was 7 years old. I was 3 years old. Summertime, Mom would have to go to work 10 hours a day. No babysitter, no program, no summer camp. She had a key that locked the door from the outside, and we couldn't open it from the inside. Leave us there 10 hours a day. The 7-year-old had to make sure this 3-year-old was fed, entertained, and that the 3-year-old didn't fall out of the second-story window. He did a good job. You know, he would run some pretty bad, play some pretty bad reruns of MASH on the TV. It's the only show we got on TV at the time. And he entertained me. He kept me entertained. He did a great job. And for me, as a 3-year-old, I saw him as a grown adult, and I expected grown adult things from him. So when he gets to school having to be literally an adult taking care of a baby taking care of a baby, you can imagine his experience of needing to be taken care of beyond the academic. So educators have this ability to give second chances, to allow us to live a second lifetime, to build a life that's transformative for ourselves. And the first step to do that is to allow us to feel belonging. So I'll ask you a rhetorical question now that will become a concrete question during our breakout session, and that is, does your school have 100% belonging with your students? Raise your hand if your school has 100% belonging with your students. Can your school have 100% belonging with your students? Rhetorical question for now. Let's deal with it later on. So, my father abandoned me before I was born. So it was my brother and my mom and I, and later on 2 more siblings. And she struggled. She worked full time, still couldn't pay the bills. We were so broke. Sometimes the electricity would go out, and we would have to run an orange extension cord from the neighbor's house just to get a light bulb. When the drug addicts would break our window to steal our stuff, the landlord wouldn't replace the window. The landlord would put a piece of plywood, and that piece of plywood would make our little apartment even darker. And so growing up in this struggle, I get to school, and I remember my first experiences feeling like school was a refuge. It was a place where I could hide from the poverty, because I felt like at least sometimes it was warm at school. At least sometimes I could feel relatively safe. I felt like I could read at school and not be bothered by people. I felt like I could learn. I felt this sense of safety and security at school. And it was the only place in my life I could feel this. But it started to change in about 3rd grade. And one of the experiences I had in 3rd grade was when I was sitting in the very front of the class, and a teacher asked me to read the word on the board. Simple word to read. And I refused to. And I was nodding like this. And she started scolding me. She said, "Victor, I need you to read this word, and I need you to do it now." And I was doing this, refusing to. And she's yelling at me, and I shut down even more. And she gets so upset that she ends up sending me out of class to go to the principal. Anyone want to guess why I refused to read the word? Not those of you that have been in my session before. There's a couple of you in here, but anyone else want to guess why she refused? I refused to read her word. What did you say? I couldn't. Is that what you said? I couldn't? Why not? I didn't know how to read. You know, by 3rd grade, I watched plenty of Sesame Street. I knew some basic words to read. I could read. Who said that? I couldn't see. Why? I couldn't see. I needed glasses. You see, I didn't realize I needed glasses. This is how poor our, healthcare condition was, right? I didn't go to an optometrist until I was 14 years old. I didn't get my first pair of glasses till I was 14 years old. So I couldn't read the word. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And this is what I call a class collision, as in social economic class, where you have a middle class assumption system. Be prepared to learn. Sometimes one of our rules, be prepared to learn, is a middle class assumption system. Because being prepared to learn assumes that I've been fed in the morning, that I didn't go through trauma last night or the day before, or in my life, and that my healthcare needs are taken care of. And this teacher, of course, was trying to teach us, was trying to maintain order, was making sure that the other kids didn't defy her like I was defying her. So you could see her perspective too. But if this teacher had been trained in, and what I liked about today's session is you have trauma-based, trauma-informed approaches you're learning about. Wonderful. If this teacher had been trained in these ways of teaching the whole child, then maybe there would have been a quick reflection about maybe this kid, something's up with him today. Let me give him the benefit of the doubt. So that's class collision, right? Collision of the classes, right? The working classes coming in and not kind of fully able to participate in a system that's set up in a middle class kind of world. Now some of you might say, well, I grew up working class. If I could do it, they can do it. But see, we're not individuals, we're a system. We represent a system. So don't matter where we come from, it's where we're at. And it's the system that makes us really sometimes, right, follow these rules. So then she sends me to the principal. I go to the principal. And the principal, really nice guy until now. And he starts scolding me. And while he's scolding me for not listening to the teacher, I'm looking down at the ground like this. And he says, Mr. Rios, son, look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you. And I still refuse to look at him in the eyes. And he yelled at me, and I even started crying, but I would not look at this guy in the eyes. You know why I didn't want to look at him in the eyes? Raise your hand and tell me. Yeah, it's cultural. In some cultures, you'll hear me say, some working class cultures, that could be all races, all ethnicities. So culture is very diverse, folks. Not just like culture as in Mexican culture or Ethiopian culture or white culture. There's no such thing as white culture, by the way. But we could talk about that later. But that's why we have to diversify our understanding of culture, right? So in working class culture sometimes, in Latino culture, in some Latino cultures, right? You have this kind of deference to authority, respect authority. So the way I was raised is you don't look at your grandparents in the eyes, you don't look at the priest in the eyes, you don't look at your teachers in the eyes when they talk to you. You defer to them. So I was giving this guy respect, but this was the cultural collision that was taking place. Because this guy's operating on, let's just call it an American-based cultural system, right? A middle-class, conventional American-based system. And here I am operating in my working-class Latino cultural system, giving him respect, and he's demanding respect. So in America, You got to look at me in the eyes before we close that business deal. And it's important to teach kids, right, to operate in multiple worlds. So it was important that he was trying to teach me the lesson. It was how he was trying to teach me that lesson that that mattered. Because I was humiliated, and this is the first time I get suspended from school. So from this point on, I just start to spiral down in terms of my faith in the system. And as I'm getting a little bit older, more extreme things are happening in my personal life. One day I was in 8th grade. My little cousin, he was a newborn. He was 2 months old. He's sleeping in his crib next door. And we had these big rats in our apartment that the landlord wouldn't get rid of. And they crawled on his crib and they began to chew his face up. They chewed his lips, his gums, his cheeks. By the time his mom got up and turned on the light, the little boy was in a pool of blood. My little cousin, he ended up in the hospital for 2 months. His little face had to be reconstructed. And by this time I tell myself, man, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to be poor. I want to get my family out of poverty. So I decided in 8th grade to drop out of school and get a job. So I went to the landscaper's house right down the street. I asked him for a job. He told me no at first, that I was too little. Then I said to him, please, his name was Johnny. I said, please, Johnny, let me get a job. My mom was broke. You can pay me whatever you want. He goes, oh, pay you whatever I want? Okay, get in the car, let's go. I had got a job. And it felt good to have a job. I mean, I was going to push lawnmowers and save money. And maybe one day I could become the lead gardener and save enough money to buy my mom the house she always wanted and to run away from all the problems of poverty. And pushing lawnmowers, I could see other people how they lived because we were at the rich people's houses. And these houses were nice, 3 stories. I remember this one house. We went to the back of the house, pushing the lawnmower. There's a swimming pool, a little fountain. There was even a statue of a little boy peeing in the pool. I go to the front of the house. This lady rolls up in a baby blue Mercedes-Benz. She's an older lady. She had curly white hair. She gets out of her car and she's holding a little white dog with curly white hair. And I said to myself, man, when I grow up, I want this house, I want this swimming pool, I want that little boy peeing in the pool. I want that baby blue Mercedes-Benz. And I want that dog with the curly white hair. And if I work hard enough, I will get the things I want in life. If I work hard. But was I right? Raise your hand if I was right. If I work hard, I get the things I want in life? Yeah? There's something missing. And this is important in terms of cultural translation. Now we're talking about working class culture. I'm shifting to different ways in which we can talk about culture. In working class culture, there's a reason why we're called working class. There's one thing we know how to do in the working class, and that is to what? To work. And when you're growing up working class, what your grandpa teaches you, your grandma teaches you, your auntie, your grandma, your godparents, your mom, your dad, one thing they teach you is work hard. And it's our job as academic institutions to translate for the children that hard work ethic, the ethic that they already bring to the table. It's an asset that they bring, to translate that into working smart. And sometimes we reject their entire culture. And even that hard work ethic goes out the window. Oh, working hard means I push lawnmowers. Well, you know what? Working hard and working smart, right? Translating that hard work into academic work. That's the $1 million solution right there. right? If we could find a way to translate that, a lot of these kids, families would get it, right? We always say they don't value education. Oh, they value education, but they have to value survival. They have to value work because that's survival, right? Primary preoccupations, yeah. So translating hard work ethics to smart work ethics is a key right here. So I'm getting paid $1 an hour, $10 a day by Johnny, thinking I'm gonna get rich one day. And I get home one day, my mom's waiting for me. She finds out I'm out of school. And she has a little talk with me, but the way my mom talked with me was with this belt. And there was no man in the house, but my mom owned a men's belt. It was that wide, about that thick, and we called it el cinturón de la víbora, the snake belt. It sounds more treacherous in Spanish, so I'll say it again. El cinturón de la víbora, the snake belt. And this belt, every time she hit you with it, it would leave a big old snake mark printed on your culo, man. I had the first tattoo in the neighborhood right here. A little snake. And so she told me, right, she said, listen, I want you to work hard, but I also need you to get an education. I risked my life many times for you guys. I've taken a lot of abuse from a lot of men for you guys. She went through a lot. My mom was on the streets, finding ways to make money for us. And to honor her, I returned to school. It wasn't for me, it was for her. And that's a theme that you see in your schools a lot with children whose families struggle. They're doing it not for themselves, right? They're for their families. We're a familial culture, working class cultures many times, because you have to reorganize the family unit. It's not nuclear sometimes. Our familial cultures, you're relying on lots of people, your community. Right? On the streets, we call it street family. Police call us gangs. We call it street family, right? And so we just learn to be familial. And so when we make it, you know, it's for my hood, it's for my people, it's for my family. And so also working as an institution to bring in the familial, that's a powerful thing to do. Because 100 years of education, research in education shows that the #1 indicator for academic success is individuality and independence. That contradicts familial culture. So you see that also collision in the research too. But in the last 25 years, researchers have actually found that that indicator might be a little false, a little biased in terms of what we're measuring. That many of us that come from the working class, we actually do it for our familias, for our family, for our people, for our community. So I go back to school, but I get caught up with the wrong crew, with a street family, and this street family is up to no good. I end up in juvie. The first time in juvie, they want to teach me a lesson, and the guards at the facility, at the juvie facility, one of them, he kept saying to me, "You're going to learn your lesson. You're going to learn your lesson." And I'm 14. I'm like, all right, let me see my lesson. Like, it's a challenge for me. It's like a rite of passage for me. And so my lesson was getting treated horribly, but then I end up in a cell with this older boy that was supposed to like terrorize me. And I was scared. And he was kind of aggressive with me at first. But then he asked me, you know, where are you from? And I told him where I was from. And then he said, what you in for? I said, I stole a car. He goes, what kind of car? I go, oh, this like old Toyota. He's like, bro, I got to teach you how to steal high performance vehicles. How'd you steal it? I took an old Toyota key and I just scraped it on the cement until it got real thin. And then I just rolled up on an old like Toyota and it opened the door and it became a universal key. He's like, that's smart, man, but let me teach you how to steal a Camaro Z28, Buick Grand National, or any high-performance American vehicle you encounter. All right? So I was learning my lesson. See, in trying to teach us a lesson through punitive approaches, we end up becoming sunk deeper into a hole. And that is the lesson in the criminal justice system and in the education system for about 35 years now. Starting to change in both places. We're starting to see restorative justice. It's beautiful to see you talking about it as a district, and it's tough to implement. Okay, I've been in a district that's been implementing restorative approaches for 5 years. It's been really tough. Tough on the teachers especially. But it's worth it. It's worth it. Less kids are getting kicked out, suspended on the street, arrested. School to prison pipeline is starting to reduce and reverse itself. So I end up leaving juvie, learning my lesson. So Tony was his name, the kid that taught me how to steal high-performance cars. I'm honest with what I did, and I paid back the people that I stole their vehicles. I paid them back in restitution to the court and paid them personally and apologized. So I feel okay about sharing what I did, but I still feel bad about what I did to these people because I messed up their vehicles. But I get out of juvie and I go buy a long screwdriver. Tony had taught me, right, how to do it. Long screwdriver, break into the car, you break the steering column, you pull the little rod under the steering column, and I was rolling in a Camaro Z28 IROC. Got arrested again. Then the third time. I wasn't learning my lesson until one day, my best friend I had grown up with from when we were very little went to the other side of town to visit some girls we met. And when we got there, we thought everything was going to be fine. They're sitting on their steps. They're looking beautiful. Bright red lipstick. They had sprayed a whole bottle of Aquanet hairspray in their hair. We're walking towards them. It's like a movie, slow motion. Turn to my friend. I make a bet to see who's going to get the first kiss. $5 bet. Walking towards them, we turn this way, and a big group of our enemies are walking towards us. And he says, let's go, man, we're going to get beat up. And I said, nah, we can't leave, because if we leave, they're going to say we're cowards. We're going to stay and throw down. And when I talk to the kids, I always say, follow your heart, not your homies. And in this case, he was following me, not his heart. And these guys came up to us. We started fighting. I fell down, got back up, fell down again. I didn't want to get back up. And that's when it happened. They pulled out a gun. I started running. My friend started running. I heard the gunshots. Boom, 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 boom. I hit between two cars. I look back. These guys are running away. I'm looking for my friend. I don't see him. Turn around the car. I see his feet. Get a little closer. My friend had been shot. He was dead. He was 15 years old. And at this moment, I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to go and see. My mom, she was too busy surviving. And she had drinking problems. The police, they thought I was criminally responsible. My friends, they were wanting to go shoot up the neighborhood that did this. So I went to the one place where someone had told me she would be there for me. I went to school to look for my teacher. I hadn't been in school in months. And I'm walking down the hallway, and my teacher, she comes out of her class, she spots me, she says, "Victor, are you okay? I heard what happened." And I'm trying to be tough, so I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And this lady, she taps me on the shoulder. And right when she taps me on the shoulder, all my pain, all my fear, all my anger began to grow. And I began to cry like a little kid in front of the whole school during passing hour. It was humiliating. I wanted to just melt away and go into the gutter with my tears. And you know what this teacher did? She opened up her arms. She gave me a hug. She said, "Victor, I am here for you. If you're ready to change your life around, I'll be here for you. But you have to do the work." I went home, I went back to the streets, kind of back and forth, but I started to think about what she told me. She was my lifeline, but I would have to start that process. And little by little, started to approach her, talk to her. She talked to her other colleagues who were having a hard time believing that I was going to change, because this wasn't just my second chance, it was like my third, fourth, fifth chance. But she believed in me. You know, this teacher, her name was Miss Russ. Miss Russ was sometimes a little bit annoying. She was always in my business, always trying to find out where I was. She was always kind of just smiling. And I always thought it was a fake smile. And even when we were mean to her, she was still smiling. Like one time, I cussed her out in class and she kicked me out. She still followed her rules. But right when I was leaving, I thought she was going to tell me what every other teacher that I had a problem with had told me in the past. She said, "Victor," and right when I looked back, I thought she was going to say, "Don't let the doorknob hit you in the you-know-what on your way out." But she did it. You know what she did? She smiled. And she said, "When you're ready, I'll be here for you." I thought she was mocking me, so I got upset. And I was like, whatever, and I left. But that's the moment it sunk in. I remembered. One person had told me they would be there for me. I went to see if that was true. With the help of my teacher, I started to catch up with my credits. Little by little, started to improve. Little by little, I started to catch up with my graduating class. And I'm proud to tell you that because of Mrs. Russ and then my hard work, that combination, I ended up graduating from high school on time and with my class. Thank you. And right around graduation time, a few months before, she comes up to me and she says, "Victor, I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. Now it's time to go to college." I said, "College, me? Man, what is this teacher smoking thinking I'm going to college? Supposed to be a gardener, maybe now a mechanic." So she proceeded to do this quintessential exercise now that many educators do with their, I don't call them at risk, I'll get to that, at promise students. She sat down with me and she asked me, 10 years from now, where do you want to be? You want to own a home? or live in an apartment? I don't want a house, Miss Russ. You want a nice car or old car? A nice car. So she itemized monthly spending for me. It's called the reality check. Then she multiplied that monthly spending by 12. She got my yearly requirement for spending. Then she showed me Department of Labor statistics for what a high school graduate makes, 2-year graduate, 4-year graduate, and then post-baccalaureate graduate. Turns out that I wanted a pretty high echelon lifestyle. And so I needed at least a 4-year degree to sustain that lifestyle 10 years from now. In this one activity, in this one moment, this teacher translated for me something, senior year of high school, that I had not been able to see in 12 years of education. Why is college good for you? In this one moment. I'm not saying that this is the silver bullet, this reality check exercise for all kids. What I'm saying is that along the pipeline, there's got to be people like Mrs. Russ pushing these kinds of exercises and life lessons and feelings of belonging for students, so that at one point, when they're ready for that epiphany, the light bulb, that they encounter it. I'm not going to say the exact words I used, but in essence I said, oh man, now I have to go to college. So I applied to college. A few months later I get a letter of acceptance that said, congratulations, you've been admitted to California State University. Wow, I couldn't believe my eyes, and right below it said, you've been admitted under academic probation status. I'm like, probation? I'm already on probation. That don't matter. My cultural world was a street world, folks. I was operating on that template. And so for this teacher to keep teaching me, and then other systems to come in to teach me that it's okay to be a shapeshifter. You could be from this community, from this culture, and then participate in this conventional world and shift back and forth. I mean, if you're part of a criminal culture, right, that's committing crime, that's different. But we can't conflate street culture or poor people's culture with crime. Right? We got to allow those to come into the school and see the assets that they bring to the table. So that's what Miss Russ was able to do. I ended up in college, and it was a tough experience. But 4 years later, while working full time, I graduated from college. And I said, after all I've been through in life, I want to get the highest degree I could possibly get, the PhD. So I ended up applying to UC Berkeley, got accepted 4.5 years later. It takes 7 years to finish a PhD at Berkeley. I finished in 4.5 years. Thank you. Thank you. In the year 2005, I became Dr. Victor Rios. So, can someone tell me what key did my teacher help me acquire with this education that she facilitated for me? What was the key? A key to believe in myself? Okay. A key to hope? A key to purpose? Wow, this is very poetic. I like it. Keep going. What else?
What about your Benz or your baby blue?
What about my car? We're working class people. We got needs, material needs. So let me tell you what key Miss Russ helped me acquire with my education. You see, I graduated on a Sunday with my PhD from Berkeley. On a Monday, I was at the bank asking for a home loan. I went and I bought a house over a few month process. I got the key to the house, put the key in my pocket. I drive to my mom's apartment. And she lived in that apartment. It was a small one. You walk up the stairs and there's so much termite damage that the whole apartment rocks when you walk up the stairs. And I knocked on her door and she opened that door. You know that smile a mom gives you after she hasn't seen you in a few days? ¿Qué pasó, mijo? How you doing, son? And I was nervous. My leg was shaking. And I pull out the key. And I said, Mom, I'm sorry that you had to wait 30 years for this. But here are the keys to a proper house to live in. You see, educators, that is the power that your school community can bring to the children that you teach. To be able to become world citizens, to be able to provide for themselves and their families, and to be able to help their communities in the future. What you are doing is helping these young people build a purpose, just like you have built for yourselves. And we have to remind our teachers in our schools that creating a sense of belonging is the #1 way to reach these young people. So here are some of the strategies that Ms. Russ used, and we'll continue on with these. These are just a handful for now as we conclude this session. But in the breakout, we'll be discussing some more detailed ones. So Ms. Rush, she says, I don't teach subjects, I teach students. So she reframes the way that she thinks about education. She changes the sort of outlook that we're here for the whole child. Ms. Russ early on saw that I was not a kid who was at risk. She saw me as a kid who was at promise. So what's the difference? So you look at pictures of kids on the streets. Many of us might say, oh, these kids are at risk. Schools might say that. In California, it's written into education code still, at risk. But at risk is a threat framework. And our schools need to further transition into asset framework. What qualities, what assets do these kids bring to the school? What assets do the families bring to the school? And so, because what you label me determines how you will treat me. And if you label me as a risk, you're going to treat me as a risk. By default, just kind of implicit bias, folks. Just not even knowing it, treating me as a risk. Even we could be the nicest people on planet Earth. You know, you give us a frame of risk, we're going to think in a risk framework. So here are just 4 of Ms. Russ's best practices to promote belonging. Ms. Russ understood our social location. She knew where we were coming from. She knew where her students were coming from. So about once a quarter, once every 3 months, so 3 times a year, she would drive into the neighborhood. And we thought she was crazy for doing so. But on a Sunday, she'd roll up to the neighborhood, and she would knock on every one of our doors. And she'd get to my door, and my mom would open the door. I'm like, that's okay. My mom's not even going to understand what she's saying. And you should have seen this conversation. My mom knew very little English. Miss Russ knew very little Spanish. And she would say, Miss Russ would say, oh, Senora, Victor hasn't been in school regularly. I'm worried about him. And my mom would say, sí, maestra, sí, maestra. Yes, teacher, yes, teacher. And Miss Russ would say, well, do you want him to graduate? Sí, maestra, sí, maestra. Let's see. Do you want him to fail? Sí, maestra, sí, maestra. So was this an utter waste of time? No, because human connection has no language. Whenever Miss Russ would leave, my mom would get a sense of ownership. Like, oh, I better take ownership for that visit. A sense of obligation. Oh, I better go and check in on the school meetings now. A sense of belonging. Oh, wow, the school came to me, because remember, you're not individuals. You're institutions. Whether you like it or not, you're not individuals. Your teachers are the same. So when a kid takes it out on them, they're taking it out on a system that's been messing them up for a while, and this is sort of the one turning point, and then the teachers embody that, and they take it very personal. So we got to work with them to see themselves as institutional representatives, right? When you know, and by the way, the corporate world is good at this. You go to, a place that's good with customer service, they know that they represent, right, the entire institution. They're not just one person. And sometimes we don't like that, because we like being individuals, but it's by default, we represent an institution. So my mom felt a sense of belonging. She started participating in school more, and this is what got her really back into participating in school, seeing that the school was interested in her, right? Miss Russ also demonstrated a genuine interest in learning. So she wasn't the person to judge whether I was going to make it to college or not. Right? It's not our jobs to determine what kid will make it, what kid won't. It's our job to prepare everyone for it and then let them end up deciding in the future. And so one day she gave me this book written by an author by the name of William Shakespeare. And the book was Othello. And she sent me home. I was a junior in high school. I should be able to read this stuff. She sent me home. I said, Miss Russ, I don't know how to read this stuff. She said, take it home. I know that if you want to, you will learn how to read it. I took it home. I read 2 sentences. I got a headache. And I threw the book on the floor. And a confession, I have not picked up Othello ever since. But what she built in me was a growth mindset. That if you want to develop the skill of reading Shakespeare, you will develop it. And I'll tell you right now, I've written 5 books. I've read dozens and dozens of philosophy, theory books. But to this day, I probably cannot read and fully understand all of Shakespeare. But if I wanted to, I have the full confidence that I would go and learn how to do it. And that was Miss Russ who built that growth mindset in me. So for us to have a genuine interest in learning regardless of our judgments about the kids. So I call this EPSA, Educator Projected Self-Actualization. So one day, Miss Russ said to me, "You will advise presidents one day." And I laughed. Miss Russ, you're crazy. Last year, I had an opportunity to have dinner with the Biden family at their home in the Naval Observatory, and Joe Biden came up to me. He says, "Mr. Rios, thank you very much for writing your book." Actually, he said Dr. Rios. You know why he emphasized doctor? Because his wife is Dr. Biden, and she's a community college teacher. So I remember clearly he emphasized doctor. He says, "Dr. Rios, read your book, Punished." He goes, "Thank you for doing this work on policing. It's very important." And all I could remember was when Miss Russ said, and I did not believe her, "You will advise presidents." A few months before that, I had been invited to the White House to advise the Obama administration, his Domestic Policy Council, on policing and gun violence in America. 6 hours in the Eisenhower building. And then I even got to meet President Obama, shake his hand. You want to shake the hand that shook Obama's hand? It's right here. I haven't washed it ever since. So I'm telling you, right? And let's go back. She projected, now this makes sense to you, right? She projected self-actualization onto me when I was still not ready for it. She saw the future Victor. She saw this Victor you know now. Miss Russ saw him 25 years ago. And I barely just saw myself the other day. You know, like, looked in the mirror, I'm like, oh, okay. Now I see what Miss Russ saw. So, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You need basic needs. A lot of our kids are right here. They just need food, water, shelter, security, safety. You're just struggling as a school sometimes just to meet these basic needs. But if you push it up a little bit, you might be a school that's giving them belonging and love, friendships, and even maybe a feeling of accomplishment. But maybe you're here as a school. No matter where you're at, though, my point is, it is my contention that you can build a pipeline up here by projecting onto them, even when you're giving them the basic needs, and that's your full-time endeavor, that you can still be projecting self-actualization on them as a school culture, as a school community. And the key to that is belonging. If they feel belonging, if they feel that you feel that they'll make it, then chances are they will make it. They'll reach that self-actualization you see in them. By the way, sometimes you will never know if you succeeded. Let me tell you why. It took me 20 years to let Miss Russ know she had changed my life. You know how she found out? She read a book I wrote called Street Life, a little memoir, and there's a chapter there called Miss Russ. So she read it, and then she realized that she's the Miss Russ I was talking about. And she says to me, "I didn't help you, you helped yourself. I was just doing my job." It was only recently that she finally acknowledged that she helped to change my life. Because that's her job, she says. Okay. Unconditional nurturing. This is the idea that we don't take things that kids say or do to us personally, that we work with them accordingly to get them to reintegrate and to make amends for whatever rules they broke. But then when they come back, we treat them as any other student we would treat. And the quintessential example here is when a kid cusses out a teacher, and sometimes the teacher takes it so personal and says, that kid cussed me out, I could never have that kid in my class again. And that's a tough one because our developmental level, like physiologically, the frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, is fully developed in adults by age 22. So that's why you see even some of our college-age kids, they're still not, for those of you that have college-age kids, but even just college students, when you were a college student, so people were doing silly things, right? Their frontal lobes weren't even fully developed. All right, matter of fact, some of our colleagues, their frontal lobes never fully developed. But that's, most of us, our frontal lobes are fully developed. The part of the brain responsible for reasoning, and so you should have a developmental approach to looking at kids and discipline and relationships so that you're not affected and taking things too personally because they're not reasoning the way that you are. And so we don't stoop to that level of development, right? Because we physiologically can reason through stuff more than the kids can. Consistency, we just have to be consistent in our rules. With all kids. And I'll end with this story. I think Omaha has at least one Trader Joe's store. Raise your hand if you've been to Trader Joe's. Oh wow, okay, all right, good. I was a little afraid. I did my research. I knew you had Trader Joe's, but I didn't know how many of you went. How many of you like going to Trader Joe's? Raise your hand. Why do you love, listen to this word, love. Why do you love Trader Joe's? Yes?
I really enjoy Captain's Zinfandels, and they've got some of the best.
Some of the best Cabernets and Zinfandels at good prices. Woo! And the best ones are from California.
Yeah, most of them are from California.
Yeah, most of them are California based, that's why. Why do you like going to Trader Joe's? $2 chuck?
Yeah, there you go.
Friendly. Friendly. You hear this? It's friendly. How does it make you feel when they're friendly? Happy, warm. So the other day I was at work. I got a text from home from my wife. Said, please pick up asparagus on the way home. So on the way home is Trader Joe's. I stopped by Trader Joe's. It's a long day, low blood sugar, 5 p.m. I grab the, low blood sugar, grab the asparagus, go to the cash register. The cashier, he starts talking to me. He says, "Sir, how are you today?" I'm like, "I'm good." Put this asparagus, I don't even give him eye contact, right? And this time it's not because I'm respecting him. This time it's just not feeling good. So I put the asparagus on the little thing. And he says, "Sir, what are you going to do with this asparagus?" I won't tell you what I was thinking I was going to do with that asparagus. But I looked at him like I was getting ready. I didn't tell him what I really wanted to do with it. But then he says, "Sir." No, I did tell him something. I said, "I'm going to cook it." And then he goes, "Okay, sir. This is what you do. You take a saute pan when you get home, and you put olive oil in that saute pan, sir. And then you wait until the white smoke starts to rise, sir. Then and only then, you have to look at it like from this angle, sir. When that white smoke is rising, that's how you know that the oil is ready for the asparagus, sir. You throw the asparagus in the oil. You add crushed sea salt, sir, and crushed black pepper. You saute it just for 2 minutes, sir. Turn off the heat, and you will have exquisite asparagus, sir." By this time, I'm like this. "Hey, thanks, man." You just taught me how to cook asparagus. And then as I'm leaving, I go, hey, you ever get tired of being so nice to people all day long? He goes, no, sir, because that's my job. And he says, and you know what else? The people over there, he points to the bullpen where the managers sit. People over there, they're also just as nice to me every day. A corporation, if a corporation can do it, we can do it. This is what I call the Trader Joe's Challenge. Can your school take on the Trader Joe's Challenge? If Trader Joe's can do it, we can do it. Why not smile at every single kid coming down that hallway, in the class, giving us attitude, thinking they're going to shove whatever they're going to shove, thinking whatever negative thought they have in their mind, treating us however they're treating us, and just being so positive with them, making them feel belonging and community in every single one of us, giving them that positive attitude. Because for this Trader Joe's employee, they don't get tired because it's part of the culture. And a lot of times we feel like, man, by the end of the day, I feel like I'm tired of smiling. But we got to figure out ways to be engaging with these students and making them feel that people care. And it's an irony that we have to learn from a corporation, right? But it's an interesting story. The success of Trader Joe's is all about how they make you feel when you walk in there. And that could be our success too. I mean, Fortune magazine wrote a story on them. Says right here, Forbes magazine, why are Trader Joe's customers the most satisfied in America? They're doing something right. So this idea of making these students feel connected, this idea of making them feel belonging and believing in them, right? Projecting this self-actualization. This is sort of the theme here. So my teacher believed in me so much that she tricked me into believing in myself. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, thank you. Wait, can I take a selfie of you in the background? Yeah? Okay, hold on. This is beautiful. Thank you. All right, here we go. Thank you.